the release of the highly anticipated sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, just one short week away, today reviewers got a chance to tell their audience what they thought about the game. I think it would be safe to say The Last of Us Part 2 is officially a critically acclaimed game, and it's not even out yet. Popular review channels like Games Radar, IGN, Telegraph, Push Square, The Guardian, God is a Geek, etc. They all gave the game a 10 out of 10 rating. Metacritic gave the game a 96 out of 100, which is absolutely phenomenal. Channels like Easy Allies and GameBeat gave the game a 9.5 out of 10. In this video, we're going to break down a lot of the reviews, some bad, some good, and we're going to do a full breakdown. I watched over 6 review videos, each about 20 to 15 minutes long. I gathered the information that I thought would be mentionable. This information mostly talks about gameplay, sequences, and some story. It's important to note that Sony was very, very strict about the review policies, since The Last of Us Part 2 did have a lot of leaks within the past couple months. There's Gaming, I believe, covered all of the restrictions that Sony has set in place. IGN stated that Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker returned to add so much heart, honesty, joy, and sadness to add to their characters, which is a big statement, and it's also one that leaves you wondering, what's sadness? It's important to note that there are no villains or heroes in the world of The Last of Us, as stated by Hallie Gross, the co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2, and Neil Druckmann, the creative director of The Last of Us Part 2, and vice president of Naughty Dog. A lot of reviewers did touch on the subject that every character's actions are just as justified as Joel or Ellie's. In the world we live in, usually there always has to be a classification between villains and heroes in stories such as this, but in The Last of Us it kind of brings that narrative that there are no villains nor heroes and everyone's actions are just as justified as another person's. Thing to note is almost in every review I watched, a lot of people stated the gameplay is the most brutal of its generation, with characters that you kill gurgling on their own blood, slow death sequences, killing guard dogs, etc. It's no easy task to kill your enemies because the AI is so advanced. They're going to be calling out to their family members or significant others, even their dogs, when you kill them. An important thing to note about the infected is they're much more lethal, stalkers being very scary according to a lot of reviewers and Neil Druckmann himself. Stalkers can hide from you via listen mode. That's something that they couldn't really do in the first game, so that will provide an extra challenge to the player in Part 2. IGN stated, it seems as though every room tells a story of those frozen in time, meaning you can find collectibles, old notes, similar to the first game in a lot of rooms you travel in Seattle, Jackson, etc. IGN stated that The Last of Us Part 2 is a masterpiece completely worthy of its predecessor. It is a very bold statement and makes you excited to really experience the game for yourself. GameSpot stated, when everything falls apart, you see her pain in its most rawest and most brutal state. That's also a very, very bold statement and does make you kind of dread but also look forward to the combat and the story that lies ahead for us. GameSpot also stated it's both beautiful and haunting at the same time, which provides a very complex story in itself. Stealth is much more evolved according to some reviewers, although another handful of reviewers does explain that the stealth isn't as evolved, so take what you will with that. GameSpot stated that stealth can definitely make you feel proud. Killing your enemy very quietly while a bunch of other soldiers are around and then quietly sliding back into the grass unnoticed can make you feel very proud of yourself during combat. Almost all the reviews I watched did say the cutscenes and the combat and gameplay just mesh flawlessly together, which is something I value in video games and something the first game could have improved more on, definitely. So I'm very excited to see what kind of story and flawlessness lies ahead. GameSpot stated it's also a very hard game to stomach for several reasons, mostly because of the combat, but also because of the story. We've seen the combat gameplay, and that in itself is hard to stomach, so imagine 30 hours of that can keep you up at night. This powerful quote is from GameSpot, which I thought was extremely a complex quote, but also one that probably should be taken extremely seriously for a lot of people who have the same thought process as the reviewer. It states, "I wanted almost none of it to happen the way it did. That's what was both so beautiful and devastating." That in itself is a so just amazing statement to the game from what I've personally seen. A lot of reviewers, actually almost all of them, stated that the second half of the game, the second half 12 hours of the game, are the most important, but unfortunately they were not allowed to talk about that half of the game and fear of leaks. I'm going to be touching on SkillUp's review. SkillUp did not give this a good review. He gave a very detailed description of why, so I understand everybody has their own opinions, and like I said, we're going to be touching on both the good and the bad. It does state that the story is a mess, and he doesn't really give too much of a reason why because he wasn't allowed to, but that's just something I thought was worth noting. Bob also said that the game was one of the most breathtakingly beautiful games he's ever played, which does make me excited to see the scenery and Seattle especially. It seems like a beautiful game, and to just have the reviewers confirm that it is breathtaking is super awesome to see. Most reviewers stated that it's so much more complex than the first game, and the story does take a turn within the second half and makes it a much more evolved story in itself. A lot of the reviewers stated that after you play the game, even years after, you're going to have an eternal debate with yourself about your actions and Ellie's actions, which is kind of eerie. According to Grits Gaming, it will not be a universal crowd pleaser. This game is going to be extremely controversial, which is what Neil Druckmann has already said in the past years. Grits Gaming also said that there was some pacing issues with the game. He didn't go too much into it because he couldn't without spoiling a lot of stuff, but that's just something that I thought was also worth noting. Moving on to Games Radar, I saved a lot of quotes from Games Radar because I thought this was a phenomenal review. A quote from the reviewer says, "Many unforgettable cutscenes are burned into my brain as if they were real memories." That's an extremely powerful statement, and honestly, I'm looking forward to it. Games Radar stated it was quite possibly the best game I've played of its generation. As stated in the past years, Games Radar also said it is completely unforgiving with its violence and brutal combat, which is something that a lot of players are going to find tough to stomach. For myself, I don't really take combat in games to heart. I kind of just see it as pixels, not real people, but in this, I have a feeling that that mindset in myself is going to be challenged greatly. Games Radar also stated that Ashley Johnson's performance is nothing short of award-worthy. I completely agree, and I haven't even played the game yet. Games Radar also stated some of the best moments of Part 2 are Joel. Even though Joel has been a character that hasn't been really discussed much about Part 2, I'm still extremely excited to see him again, as I think we all are. Games Radar also stated the tempo of the game always feels extremely unpredictable, but also extremely compelling in the same sense. Games Radar also said it is quite possibly the best looking game we've seen on the PS4 to date. I could not agree more. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a very close second for me, as well as Detroit Become Human. The graphics are absolutely incredible with those games, as well as The Last of Us Part 2. Easy Allies also said it is an utterly essential tale, which is something that is vague in some aspects, but also incredibly telling as well. Music from the returning composer Gustavo Santaolalla is also some of the best we've ever seen compared to the first game, which honestly I thought couldn't even be topped, but in this game it is, according to reviewers and according to myself, with the music and the untitled soundtracks I've heard. It is incredibly important during combat. This is something a lot of reviews touched on that I think is worth noting. The melee in this game is extremely advanced, and I love that about it. That's all the notes I have on the reviews. It's no secret that The Last of Us Part 2 is quite possibly the most controversial sequel of its time, but it's also one of the most highly anticipated sequels of the PS4 generation, if not the most anticipated. Nonetheless, I myself am super excited to see these characters and get to experience the story for myself on June 19th, 2020, just one short week away. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. My Instagram will be down below, as well as links to all the reviews I mentioned in this video. Let me know what your thoughts are after seeing the reviews if you did. And until next time, endure and survive. Bye.